Worry is a universal human experience. We all tend to worry. However, for some people, their worries can get out of control and they tend to worry excessively, much more than the average person. But why does this happen? Why is it that some people tend to worry much more than others? Well, in today's video, we're going to be talking about 5 reasons or 5 ways of thinking that might be behind your excessive worry. But before I get into that, just a couple of disclaimers to go over. I'm a registered psychologist in the province of British Columbia, Canada, and this video is for informational purposes only. It is not intended as a substitute or replacement for advice from your doctor or mental health professional. Now, with those things out of the way, let's start talking about reasons people worry. Now, if you worry a lot, you may not be aware of this, but one of the things that might be causing you to worry so much is that you believe that the worry is doing something useful or helpful. Now, human beings can be quite rational, and we tend to engage in behaviors that we think serve some useful or beneficial purpose. For example, I change the oil in my car every 5,000 kilometers because I believe that changing the oil in my car every 5,000 kilometers is good for the long-term maintenance and efficient operation of my vehicle. In other words, I change my oil because I believe that there's some benefit to changing my oil. But suppose one day a friend of mine pulls me aside, and this friend of mine knows everything there is to know about cars and mechanics and all of that stuff. And this friend of mine tells me, "Remy, I've noticed that you've been changing the oil in your car every 5,000 kilometers. You see, the truth is, it's just a scam by the oil companies to get you to keep buying more and more oil. Nothing's happening to the oil. It's perfectly fine if you just leave it there." Now, if I believed my friend, think about how that would change my behavior. I'd probably stop changing the oil in my car because I now believe that changing the oil in my car doesn't actually do anything, and it's just a waste of time and it's a waste of money. You see, we engage in behaviors and we do things because we believe they serve a purpose. And if we stop believing that these behaviors serve a purpose, we're going to stop doing them. So you might be wondering, what does this have to do with worry? Well, if you relate this to worrying, what we know is that people who worry a lot tend to hold beliefs that the worry is actually serving some useful purpose, or that they're getting some benefit out of the worry. Now, this might be a bit of a strange concept, as you may have never ever thought about your worry as having positive benefits, but probably have only seen worry as contributing to anxiety and making you feel miserable. But if you think about it, you may be able to come up with some reasons or beliefs that you hold to suggest that worry is actually serving some positive benefit. So, what might be some of the potential benefits or reasons that a person might worry excessively? Well, the first is that people who tend to worry a lot tend to believe that worrying helps them find solutions to problems. By worrying excessively, it increases my vigilance and increases my focus on the problem. It helps me find better solutions to the problem. It may increase how prepared I am to act on a particular problem, and it may help me have a more well thought out solution to the problem. Sometimes it may even be the case that I think to myself that the worrying can help me prevent problems in the first place by helping me recognize and avoid them earlier on. So, if this was actually the case, worrying a lot would be helpful because it would help me solve problems and help me deal with problems that come up in my life. Can you relate to this? If so, it might be one of the reasons that you tend to worry a lot. You see, although low levels of worry may at times be helpful in thinking of solutions to problems, high levels of worry actually interfere with our ability to solve problems. Think about what happens when you're worrying about problems. What are you actually thinking about? See, worry makes us see all of the ways in which our solutions may fail or the situation may turn out badly. And in that sense, worry can actually make solving problems more difficult. And if we're less capable of solving problems that we're worrying about, it means that these problems are going to linger and give us something to continue worrying about. Now, the second reason that people tend to worry excessively is that they tend to hold beliefs that worrying is a motivating factor. Worry helps motivate me to get things done. The idea behind this is that if I worried less, I wouldn't get as much done. I wouldn't be as productive. I wouldn't be as motivated to do anything. Essentially, the worry is the kick in the pants to get me moving, to accomplish something. And people who worry a lot see worrying as a good way of motivating themselves to do something. And if this was the case, then worry would be a good thing, because it would mean that I would be more motivated and I would be more driven to accomplish things. The problem with this belief is that it confuses worrying with caring about something. So, for example, if I'm not worrying excessively about getting a school project done, that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to become complacent and never get around to doing it. It simply means that I'm going to be a lot less stressed out about doing the project while I work on it. In fact, worrying excessively about something often leads to a sense of inactivity or paralysis because of how anxious and uncomfortable a person becomes when they think about what they need to do and all of the potential negative outcomes that could occur. And that's what the worry is focused on. The third reason that people tend to worry a lot is that they believe that worrying protects them from experiencing future negative emotions. In other words, by worrying in advance of something bad happening, that will protect me against feelings of sadness, guilt, or disappointment if the bad thing does happen. I won't be caught off guard. I won't be surprised. The worrying allows me to mentally prepare myself for the negative outcome or the bad news I might receive. In other words, the excessive worrying is like making a deposit in a bank account for later on. And so if the negative event were to actually happen, I've already invested part of my negative reaction ahead of time. And so therefore I'll be less affected when the bad thing does happen. Additionally, sometimes people can associate strong feelings of guilt with not worrying. If something bad were to happen to someone I love and I hadn't worried about it in advance, I'd feel very guilty. It'd feel like I did something wrong. I didn't allow myself to see it as a possibility. And so now I've been caught completely off guard. And the fact that I wasn't paying as much attention to it or I wasn't worrying about it, that might have actually contributed to it happening, or at least contributed to me feeling so bad about it happening. So the reason I'm worrying so much is that it allows me to prepare myself emotionally just in case something bad were to happen. So if this were true, it would mean that worrying is almost like this protective emotional force field around yourself that prevents you from being caught off guard or being surprised by negative events that might occur. The fourth reason that people tend to worry a lot is that they believe that worrying in and of itself can prevent negative outcomes or bad things from happening. And this has a bit of a superstitious feel or a superstitious flavor to it, in that I believe that my thinking actually has an impact on preventing catastrophes or preventing negative outcomes from actually occurring. I've always worried about my child being involved in a serious motor vehicle accident, but it's never happened, so my worrying must be working. So I have to continue doing it because the worrying is one of the things that's keeping my child safe. So the idea behind this is that my worries are directly responsible for the non-occurrence of negative events. Now you might think, this sounds ridiculous, but it's actually very common. People often hold superstitious beliefs about how their behavior may affect the outside or the broader world. There's a certain place I have to sit to watch my favorite sports team play a game in order to make sure that they're going to win. I'm going to have to wear my lucky tie going into this job interview to make sure that I get the job I really want. The superstition is also reflected in the notion of putting positive thoughts or positive energy out into the universe to ensure that good things are going to come back to me. We do a lot of this type of magical thinking, and in the case of worry, with the belief that worry in and of itself can prevent bad things from happening, this is a form of magical thinking called thought-action fusion. And with thought-action fusion, essentially my thinking has, the idea is my thinking has an effect on the actions of others or what's going to happen in the world without me doing anything to make those outcomes happen. It's just my thoughts that are playing the role. And finally, the fifth reason that you might worry so much is that you see worry as a positive personality characteristic, a positive personality trait. You view worrying as something that's good because it demonstrates that you're a caring, conscientious, loving person. I'm the worrier of my family. If I worry less, my wife would be disappointed in me because she would think that I just don't care about her anymore. By worrying, I show that I care. I show that I'm a loving, caring husband. What kind of parent would I be if I didn't worry about my children? Don't all good parents worry about their children? So in this case, what happens is that the person is confusing worrying with caring. It's almost like there becomes this association between how much I love someone and how much I worry about them. The more I love the person, the more I have to worry about them, because the worrying serves as an index of my level of love and care. But is this actually the case? Do people who worry less really care less about the people that they love? Would people you love look down on you if you actually started worrying less about them? It's something to think about. So it's important to recognize that people who worry a lot tend to believe that worry is more useful and serves some positive purpose. And as long as you hold these beliefs, it makes sense that you're going to continue worrying because the worrying serves a benefit. If you're interested in learning more about this, I encourage you to check out this video on ways of challenging and overcoming these false beliefs about the usefulness of worry. So that's it for today's video. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.